for quite some time, like 3:30. It was already laid out. So here we are, the new world. Today we have Mal Cooper, and we're talking universe building. So where are you coming to us from, Mal?
I'm in Boston, cloudy, dreary Boston that has no sun.
Little rain?
It looks like it probably will today. This is the time of year where it can actually rain every day for 30 days.
Okay. So you got
lovely.
that going for you.
Yes, we do.
Hang on.
Oh, that's a good call. I'll do the same thing.
I've been pacing myself this morning, and this is only my third cup, but it's my second half cup of high test. So this is what it takes to then equal my first full cup of coffee for this morning, and I've been up since 3.
I was going to say, when you first scheduled this with me, I'm like, isn't it like 6 a.m. for you that we're doing this?
It is. I just got Alex Newton of K-Lytics fame. We're gonna have him on the show, coming to you live from Switzerland. And for his good time is 2:30 his time, which is 4:30 my time. So we're doing 4:30 my time for the show with Alex Newton, which should be a great time talking about the data and what to do with the data. So you should tune in. It'll be 8:30 your time on May 11th, I believe, is what we set up for that he had on his schedule.
Cool.
So we have a few people joining us: Dean, Lynn, Hal, Rob, Lawrence, Elaine. Thank you all for checking in with Be Live to let them know that to coordinate with Facebook so we can see who's actually commenting. Thank you very much. And it just helps us, and it helps our guest. So Mal can see the comments and see actually who's commenting in order if there's any kind of follow-up that needs to happen. So, and if you list questions, also another important safety tip from Elaine Bateman is just put in all caps question before your comment, and then we can see, because they come up and it's depending on screen size, it might be kind of small, and that makes it real easy to see. Also, as we start every show, it's Thursday. Okay.
That's important to note.
It is Thursday all day, and we're here. So give us some words, Mal. How are your ads going right now before we get into universe building?
Everybody always wants to talk about my ads. This is the least expensive I've seen ads since 2016. I don't have a single ad that's over 16 cents a click right now. And I run some ads that are really highly targeted that sometimes cost 50 cents a click, because I've narrowed down my audience so much that they're wording from a small pool, and they're like 14, 13 cents. So my advice right now to folks, if you're scared of ads and you haven't done a lot of work with them, this is the time to try. More people are on Facebook than ever before, and ads are cheaper than ever before. So you have the most people for the least money in front of you right now.
And that's really what I was looking for. Facebook ads, cheap. My ad budget, I changed actually nothing. I started a few new ads, and I've spent half the money this month that I intended to spend. Half. I spent $1,500 is all, instead of my normal about $3,000 over the course of the month, and I doubled the number of ads I have running. So
that's crazy, isn't it?
So it's like 4 times the value. So this is like $10,000 worth of ads that I'm dropping out there.
That's awesome.
Now my response is it's still good. So I'm getting my payback is because now my overhead is shrinking. My earnings are a little bit up. So overall, huge win.
Yeah.
And actually, I took this opportunity to hire and train a new ads guru, a college senior.
That's cool.
Who is majoring in marketing.
Nice.
And finance. So this individual's coming on board. We know him, so that helps. And this is we're able to get him into Mark Dawson's courses. He started with your book and your second edition, and then is going through Mark Dawson's courses right now in order to get up to speed. So huge win for the home team, and as a potential future viable business. So if we get him trained up right, then he will be able to bring in other customers, both, some, and the lawyer option is we're required 9%, 10% of cases have to be done pro bono.
Okay.
So he'll be able to split and say, okay, here's high-end clients that I can really make money with, and then I'll take some newer authors and help them, even though, because the time investment, you've got to have a big package. You can't just take one book out of the blue and then start running ads. It takes time to build up. It takes time to understand the books, what's going to hook, what the target readership is that it resonates with. So if you have one book and you're like, I want to hire an ads guy, you can't do it, because ads people absolutely cannot make any money at that. But here's what we're doing. We're going to train a guy up, take advantage, hopefully make profit, and then be able to then, for him to expand his business. And especially now as a high school senior, working from home, how about that option for something lucrative by helping other people make money with ads?
Perfect industry right now.
People read books. So let's talk books. Mal Cooper started a few years ago, wrote her first book, and then it languished. Tell us that story, and then how it hit, and then why you decided to make the biggest shared universe in the known universe.
I don't think it's the biggest yet, but I'm getting there. That's my goal. So I wrote my first book. The first book I published came out in 2012, and back then I labored under the misunderstanding that you had to take years to write books, and that was normal and fine and everything, and so I didn't really put the effort and the focus into it that I might have if I understood that I could do more. And also I sort of just put the book out there, and I did just some basic marketing stuff. And back then it was stuff like blog tours and whatnot. And I used the wrong kinds of blog tours, and I messed up my also bots, and I maybe sold 300 or 400 copies of the book in the next 4 years. And by fall of 2016, so closing in on 4 years, I had put out the second and third book, and I saw a bit of a bump with the third book, and Jill and I realized that with read through we could actually start running ads for the first book, and it could actually be profitable. So we played around with some 99-cent ads, and we actually really investigated pricing and how we should be competitive and stuff like that. And I went from on my books alone from making maybe like $300 on a really good month to 25. So that'd be like in June, I was making $300 a month to $25,000 a month in November. So it was a marked increase in sales, to say the least. But I also knew that it wasn't going to last. I was talking to so many authors who talked about how the titans of the early Kindle years were completely gone. Pardon me, or so close to being completely gone that they weren't even around any. You didn't know of any of them anymore. And also that I knew that my ability to market this one first book was just going to run out. I wasn't going to keep running ads for this one book forever and keep this train running. So I realized I had to increase the amount of books I was writing, and I realized I needed more series, because I like to write very linear series. So I needed more book ones to market. And that's why I decided, and a lot of it was looking at what Michael Anderle was doing. Late 2016, he was really ballooning with co-authors. I think you were one of his first, Craig, back around 2016. And that's when I realized that this was the time to really expand quickly and try and get as much stuff out there as possible. So for the next 2 years, I did like 60 books over 2 years, about 2/3 of them solo, 1/3 co-authored. And in an effort to build this huge backlist that I could use to sort of carry me through any hard times.
And the books, we always have that memory from 20 Books Vegas 2017 with you on stage in a panel, and you were publishing a book. You're like, hang on, I'm publishing a book right now, and I have to do this right now. Yeah. It's like, okay, I'm out of time. And but you've brought other people into that universe as well. Mm-hmm. So your shared universe. How did you set that up for multiple author engagement?
Well, one of the things I did, sort of one of the driving things behind creating this Aeon Forte universe is I've always been a big fan of history. I've always studied a lot of wars and conflicts and migrations of people and whatnot. And I've always been fascinated by World War II and how many stories there are in World War II. And the fact that you could probably write books for your entire life and not cover half the stories that are about World War II. And you could read books for your entire life, and there would still be more stories about World War II, because it was just such a massive war. And I read these science fiction books that were about wars across multiple star systems and whatnot, and they would wrap up in 6 books. I'm like, no. It would take far longer to tell this story. So I decided I wanted to create a setting large enough to actually tell a story like this, to tell a story about about a war spread across hundreds of thousands of star systems and how that would impact people for generations and stuff like that. Because even when you have a stellar environment like that, and maybe it takes weeks or months to travel between stars, the effects of a war could ripple out for centuries. So the war could be long gone, but like trade route problems would still be happening centuries later because supply lines were disrupted and it trickled down. So I wanted to tell a story like that. And so to do that, I realized I needed more than just me to have that vision, that me alone, I wouldn't be able to see it. I wouldn't be able to do it fast enough, and I wouldn't be able to think of all the things. And that was actually my main driver for bringing in co-authors. I wanted to create a more accurate representation of what this could look like. And I needed more minds than mine to do that.
And another thing that you did that I found fascinatingly insightful was you said this is a 30,000 year time frame, so you have multiple entry points into Aeon 14, because it's like, hey, if somebody writing a book about medieval Europe, they don't need to know anything about the technology of 21st century New York City in order to make it work and blend. Not like one little tidbit that might show up later, like a naming convention, like Baron von Rothschild. Oh, von. Okay, that one little tidbit, and that's all you really need. But here you can get an entry point and say, hey, I want to learn how this ultimately turns out. And then you see a von Rothschild. Oh, hey, they're in New York City. And so yes, and that was when you said that gave me multiple entry points, and then that leads to Annalise's question. Let's see if we can bring this up. It doesn't want to. Oh, they changed their thing. It says show now. Okay.
So I would say that the for me, because I write linear series, like you can't pick up book 3. It won't make any sense to you. You need to start with book 1. If I was only writing one series, and let's say like when I first started doing it, I thought it was going to take me 5 or 6 years to finish the series. And actually, I'm still working on that series. The last book actually comes out next month. But I knew that my ability to market that book one for 4 or 5 years would wane. I just wasn't going to be able to come up with enough new ways to pimp that one book. So I needed multiple book ones. And the great thing about that too is I have books like I have Rika's Marauders, which is like ground pounding cyborgs and mechs and a lot of surface combat, which is a very different kind of reader. There's readers who love that stuff. They eat it up versus my other series, which is all like admirals on starship bridges and big fleet conflicts and stuff like that. And there's people who love those kinds of books. And then in addition, I have another series, which is all sort of nearer future. Everybody's just in our solar system. And it starts out with like a dad who's raising his kids on a freighter that's falling apart, trying to get back into the inner solar system to sell some goods and make enough money to fix up his ship, stuff like that. And it's very gritty and real. And they're talking about, do they have enough flour to make enough pasta to keep eating, before they meet the next port. And there's different readers who like those different things. And while I think I can tell a good enough story that once I grab them with one of those, they'll explore the whole universe. I can grab that near future gritty sci-fi reader with that story, but much better than I could grab them with the big admirals on starship bridges. So I can now run ads and do marketing that will appeal to all these different types of readers and then suck them all in. And I did that very deliberately too. I picked like the major tropes, the major subgenres, and wrote series that target those.
Okay. Do you skip out and go to like on a planet in the Aeon 14 universe where it's almost a completely different, trials and tribulations of everyday life during a post-apocalyptic? Do you have any of those kinds of stories that you also target those readers?
Yeah, there's one series. It's called Machete System Bounty Hunter that I wrote with Zen DiPietro, and that one is a much more. It's actually a society where technology is limited by the segment of space they're in. There's this group called the Orion Guard, and they make sure that no one advances their technology very much. So in a universe where people are living for thousands of years, these people live for 80 and they're dealing with cancer, and treatments and stuff like that, and a new drug that the pharmaceutical company wants to keep out. So it's very, very real and modern type stories that people can relate to very closely in that scenario. We have another one that's even taking advantage of like the 80s retro stuff, where it's a world almost like the Matrix in a way, where there's this one world that's set back in the 80s effectively. And we can tell like these fun sort of 80s style stories, like everybody's got sneakers and ghetto blasters and stuff like that. And the main character drives a Trans Am, and it was actually all set up by these AIs to sort of like be like a nice civilization for people to get away from everything else. But it's been lost and no one even knows it's there anymore. So we can tell all these different kinds of stories in the same universe. And like you're saying with the Vaughn, we can then tie in like one little note, one little character, one comment, one reference, and the readers love it because it starts to create this large tapestry. They get to, it's like they're putting together a puzzle and they're starting to see like chunks of it going together and stuff like that. It's a lot of people will read it. The people who like to explore the whole map are the folks who love that sort of thing.
Well, their own. This is the ultimate in nerddom. The only way you'll get the Easter eggs is if you are an insider, because those Easter eggs are all unique to Aeon 14.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the thing. But also, one thing you do, math and science. Okay, let's move on to something more important. Here we go. What a great question, Dean. This is something that we cannot get enough answers to help people understand how to approach this.
So I don't use beta readers because at this point, and I never did because I didn't know about them when I started out. But at this point, I have this vision that I know where it's all going. So beta readers aren't that useful for me, and I'm also at the point too where I've got enough readers that I could like publish my laundry list and they would buy it from me. So I don't need to be quite as particular. That being said, I pay very close attention to reviews, and I pay very close attention to the sorts of things people don't say about my books. Like I think about the things that I was trying to do, and I see who mentioned those things, and I see who didn't mention certain things at all, and I use that to guide the series forward. Like for example, in the third book in my series that follows my main character, Tannis Richards, I thought that I had given my readers the colony world that I had led the reader to believe that the colonists were eventually going to come to a colony world, and I gave them one for like 70 years, like a temporary colony world. I thought I had paid that one off, and the readers were all like, "We can't wait till they get to the real colony. You know, when are they going to get to the colony?" And like, I thought I gave them the colony, and like, oh crap! I have to give them the thing that they are expecting. So I look for those things, you know, the things that they say and the things they don't say. And I use that a lot because I really feel like if the story is good and you're able to tell a good story, you can direct it in a way that will be entertaining. And I suppose if you're worried, if your concern is about like, is the series good? That if you can tell a good story and your quality of your writing is good, people will follow it no matter what it's about. There's an audience out there for everything. So I worry that sometimes authors will have a book that's fantastic, an idea that's fantastic, and they put it in front of the wrong people, and then they don't do it. So I'm leery about making big decisions based on small number of people like that. Like if people come to you and say like you're not crafting scenes properly, your climax is missing, that's a different story. That's a different thing entirely. But
and that's one thing I would encourage people plenty. In addition to the fact that you must live near a road and you have trucks driving by. If you hear that from my house, it's, and this is an oddity that we have up here, it'll be a DC-6 flying over top. The biggest collection of DC-6, 1930s four-engine airplanes is up here in Fairbanks, and it's the air cargo because they can fly them to all the remote villages.
Right,
they can deliver more cargo cheaper. They also have some leftover C-130s that they fly in because of the ability to fly off rough runways.
Yeah.
And the thing lumbers off the airport, which is all the way on the other side of town, all 6 miles away. and I live way out of town. It's actually, I think, 10 miles away. But the thing still, it lumbers into the air.
Well, I bet,
and it's still low coming over our house if it's going up to some of the northern villages. But anyway, I digress.
I'm sorry you can hear the cars so well. I normally do this downstairs, but my back has been killing me, so I have to sit in a better chair here.
No. Take care of yourself first, and that's always fodder for our shows. Is how are you taking care of yourself during this time? Mm-hmm. And for you, nothing has. You're still working from home, so nothing has changed in that regard. But you may be spending more time not getting out as much as you used to. Even if you're getting out to walk, it's still trapped in the chair. I found that I'm even in the chair more. Because heart surgery and my dog passed away, so I'm inside a lot more. So I have to force myself to go out because I don't have my furry alarm clock that comes in and says, "Hey, let's go outside for a walk."
Exactly right.
And whenever she came in, I would instantly. So a lot of my books, my proofreaders, would say, "Hey, you stopped mid-sentence here." I'm like, "Oh, hey, no shit. My dog must have come in," and then I forgot and I was moving on to the next thought, and I just leave it like that. And yeah. So it's being moving. So the first book. Now I'm in a position as well that I can tell if a series is going to be just fine, and I can tell if a story is going to be just fine. But I still, like yesterday, 2 days ago, I ran my first 20,000 words in my newest book past my insider team to make sure it's on track. And they noted, "Oh, hey, it can't all be training." And I'm like, "Oh no, it won't be. It's just, are we engaging the readers through the first 20,000 words? Because it's a final book in the series. I need to set up a number of different tendrils to close out these subplots that have happened in the first 18 books. So this is the 19th book in the series.
There's a lot to do there. I think probably for Dean is I hate like wasting words. So I would probably just take what you're thinking about doing. I would make like a reader magnet of some sort out of that and put that out there and see how it does.
Okay.
So figure out a way to write like a 20,000 word prequel story of some sort that you can put in book funnel, and you can do some multi-author book funnel things or story origin or something like that, and see what kind of traction you get with that.
Yeah, alternate ways to do it on this one. My insider, the great thing about my insider team is they will drop what they're doing and they will read it. And I had my feedback in a day.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, okay. And yesterday was a crap day. I only got like 700 words. It was a bad day all the way around.
Bad day yesterday too. I wrote like 3 paragraphs.
So yeah, I had 4,600 words the day before, and yesterday was 700. So today I've got 500 already in the kitty, well ahead of the power curve. But I check. Even me, 19th book in the series. Yeah, I got this. It's fine. I check because sometimes I forget. Sometimes I can go off on tangents, and they're like, and my insider team, they love my stuff, but they're also brutally honest. They might ask a simple question. They'll highlight a whole paragraph or a whole page and say, "How does this add to the story?" With that little question, and you look at it and say, "Oh shit, 500 words down the tube."
So it's terrible.
I copy them and I paste them somewhere else because I never delete words, because you might be able to throw them out as, "Hey, here's a snippet I deleted from the recent book."
Yeah, exactly. Right. Something from the cutting floor or something like that.
That's right. You give the director's cut. Okay, it sucks worse than the final cut, but hey, here you go. A little something. Okay, question coming up. We answered that one. So how do you got to test it. Either you know yourself, or you've got to get third-party input, which if you have a readership. If you don't, now you got to trust strangers, and you have to make sure that they're in your genre. My insider team read just about everything except horror. Good thing I don't write horror. So I can float it to them, and I'll get my feedback, and they'll keep me on track. But you've got to make sure, and so many people do this. Like, hey, I wrote the science fiction book, and I ran it past my family, and they all love it. Like,
yes. That's not going to work.
Yeah, that's not optimal, shall we say? Do you finish each series before? That's a loaded question.
No, I don't. And a lot of what happened was more a function of Amazon's 90-day pre-order cycle than anything else. And I actually love it when the medium affects the art, because I think that's like something that's really cool. Like imagine like a sculptor gets handed like this weird chunk of marble that has like a different texture than he's used to. Well, the medium affects the art. The sculpture will be different on a different piece of marble than it would have been, a painter on different canvases and with different paints. And for us, the Amazon 90-day pre-order thing that indies were subjected to drastically changed the landscape of the way books are done. Because what I would end up doing is I had to like compress the amount of time it took to write a book into somehow into that 90-day cycle, but I also want to be running multiple series. I didn't want to. I knew I couldn't do the same series book after book after book and just putting them out like every 3 or 4 weeks. That this doesn't work for my brain. So I was running I think at the peak I was running 11 series simultaneously, and each one, the next book was 90 days away. So I was releasing the book almost every week. But I had usually I had sometimes like 7 or 8 different series between writing that, coming back to it. And for me, that gave me the ability to change and not have to write the same thing all the time, while effectively getting a sort of rapid release scenario because I do believe that releasing a book is its own form of marketing that saves you from having to spend a bunch of money on marketing. You can spend a bunch of money marketing, or you could release another book. And in many cases, you can make the same money from doing either one. So that was kind of how I did that. I've actually wrapped up very few series, like maybe 4 or 5 of my series are wrapped up. The rest of them are kind of, some of them are sort of in limbo, just because I needed a recharge, and some of them I'm working on wrapping. But I'm at 24 or 25 separate series now.
And that's cool. And also your universe now. Is your goal, even if a series isn't selling, to finish each of those series?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like what I'm doing, my Bad Company, the 19th book. Okay, by the 18th book, the readership had dropped off enough in the read through that it was only marginally profitable.
Mm-hmm.
The readers, the hardcore fans are like, no, you can't end it. It's like, from a business perspective, yeah, I can, and I have to.
And I will.
So I was going to do 8 books in this final series, but I'm doing only 7 because,
Mm-hmm.
hey, the numbers show that for my time, the 7th book, now the books are anywhere from 50,000 to, well, I had one that was 117,000 as an anomaly, but generally 50 to 70,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
And this one will probably be, it's 20,000 words, and I barely have the setup, so it'll probably be about 120,000 words.
That's
so I'm
awesome.
going to give them a really big book, like a double book to end it. But that one, I mean, it's time to end it. So
yeah.
I think it's important that you do end the series, so you don't leave people hanging and say, hey, I'm just not making money on it, so I'm just not going to write any more books in it. Yeah. That chases readers away, and you never want to give a reader a chance to go away and not come back. So you always leave it. Yes, I will finish it. Maybe not next month. Like, I've been publishing a book a month, and
yeah.
this is book 7, the last book. It's been a year.
Mm-hmm.
Because I couldn't get myself up to speed to write the book, because it's like, okay, I got to finish the series. I made no money on this last one. I got to write books that are making money.
Yeah, exactly.
and have had some very lucrative series. And then after this one, I'm going to finish another series, one that's like a charity series, because
mm-hmm.
the original author passed away in 2015. We picked up his books. He had 3.5 done in a series. I touched up those 3, finished book 4, which was half done, and wrote books 5, 6, and 7, and have book 8. And the readers, his readers, he's a Western author who wrote a post-apocalyptic, have come along for the ride, which is really cool. And because we tout it as a Western mystery, Western post-apoc, and it sells just fine.
That's
but
cool.
Again, it's a charity thing, and I just want to finish that last book, which will be the next one. Otherwise, I've finished 5 series in the last 8 months. And then I will only have 2 series still going moving forward. And that, I think that's important, because I'm doing all my own author page thrillers. I'm moving over into I just love those. Cool. So I'm going to keep my my one series going, and then the other series, we've got that already scoped out, outlined, and it's stoked. When I talked to Michael Anderle about it yesterday, he's like, I want to read more of that. I'm like, okay, that's what we want to hear.
There you go.
So yes, writing several at one time. You have, for your own sanity, also in order to keep moving forward. When I was only writing one series, I was burning.
Yeah.
When I write a different series, it's, hey, I can go there and I can come back and get excited about the characters again, as opposed to, God, not the same old people. You know, like you might have if, let's say, you never left your house for 2 months.
Exactly. Otherwise, it's like, oh, look, Tannis is like in yet another corridor, another space station.
Hey, should we go hang out in the kitchen today?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
How did you recruit your co-authors?
So my first group of co-authors, I actually put out a call on the 20 Books of 50K group, asking if anybody wanted to join in. And I lucked out in that some of them had actually read some of my books already too, which was nice.
That's cool.
So I brought on a number of co-authors and a couple other authors who also hadn't read all of my books but were interested in collaborating, also reached out to me. And that'll happen mostly in 2017. I've only brought on one other co-author since then. But the co-authors I bring on now, the later ones, are actually all my readers. I take the readers and I kind of pick them out by looking at the ones who've been giving me the best feedback, the ones who like the best prose, the best story ideas. And I say like, hey, would you like to write a story? And it starts out with like a novella or a short story or something like that. And then a couple of them moved on to writing novels. And the thing I like about that is that it puts a little bit less pressure on me, because working with a co-author who needs to like have this be their income is hard because you're like, now like someone else's food on their table is my responsibility. That's a lot of pressure that I don't necessarily want to have. But if you work with like readers who are just looking at this some extra scratch, it's a lot less pressure for everybody all around, and it makes for a more enjoyable experience. And two of my co-authors, one of them started out as a reader, one of them was another author just getting started, have now both gone full time as well. So
that's cool.
That's been really rewarding to have that happen.
I tell you what, I love me some Zen, and I love James S. Aaron as well. Both very, very high quality people, and I'm glad that they jumped on board with you and that you've been taking good care of them. So how did I recruit my co-authors? I think the more important question is, how many co-authors have I fired? And I think my number is over 50 now. I just you miss a deadline. You fail to learn the lessons of here's some crutch words. Please stop using those, and you keep using those. Okay, you're fired. I mean, I don't have time to train somebody a second time. I don't mind making a correction the first time. So yeah, I just it's the easy way out. I just
which one's the Marine?
Yeah, which of these two?
I've never fired any co-authors. So
geez, and in LMBPN, Michael Anderley's company, they actually called it Martelle. Hey, I had to Martelle a guy yesterday. I'm like, oh my God,
you're a verb.
I'm a verb. So how do you find it? You ask. I usually do an ask in 20 books maybe, or more importantly, I'll see and watch books, and I'll see people who write well but aren't doing well. And it's like, okay, hey, let's marry up here because I can get the book out there. I mean, not as good as you. Your ads are exceptional. You keep moving forward on that stuff. And I have the base readership, and I can work through a certain minimum standard, and then we can move up. So get people that way and help them move through. And now I want a minimum of a series. Unfortunately, I had 2 series where the authors ghosted me before the end of the series, and I got asked by having to write the last books in the series myself. So I hate collaborators, and I love collaborators.
I know it is a bit of a love-hate relationship. I'll give you that.
Yeah, hang on just a second. We got another question. Here we go, and this is a great question too.
No one likes my answer to this question. It's all up here. It's all in my head. I
have to say that most of mine is too. I have a spreadsheet which is random facts put on it, and that's it. So it could be notes. It could be OneNote. It could be your notes in your phone. That's the extent of my universe. I have like a character, maybe a characteristic, and that, like a ship name, and then the AI that runs that ship, and that's it. Just a list of random notes that go across the whole series. So it's not like, oh, in this book, I mean, that's my insider team, once again, is a godsend because they have all of my original Word files, and they've put them into like a single searchable database. So when I'll ask, hey, this secondary character, what's her name? They'll be able to search and find it. And I've forgotten some main character names too. It's bad.
I've messed it up too. The thing that I think that helps me is some of my books have glossaries in the back, small glossaries. A lot of my books, because in AM14, so much of the stuff spreads out across multiple series now, and there's about 12 series where the characters cross over all the time. There's about 55,000 named characters in AM14. So, and a lot of them have the same name. Like I think I have 7 Terrys. For whatever reason, there's a lot of Terrys floating around in the future. But I have cast listings at the beginning of a lot of my books too, which helps. And then every single one of my chapter headers actually has a date, a location, and a region that will have times a planet, star system, ship, and stuff like that. So that one thing has been a godsend because it's very easy for me to research my own books to say like, okay, what happened when? I can go skim through the chapters and find the one with the right planet name and then go look for the city name in that chapter. You know, where if I didn't have that, I'd be screwed.
And that's something I didn't do right away. But then my editor said, you really need to do this because your readers don't know where you are.
Yeah.
And so locational, anytime I do a scene change, it's the new location.
Yep.
And thanks to Lynn Stigler for saying, you got to do this. She didn't really give me a choice. and and putting those in, because now I can find places, and even if they move to a different place during that scene, I know where they started, and then the next scene they'll start wherever they ended up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that is very important.
Yeah.
Keep track. You got to keep track some way. I know you can do it in Scrivener. I don't use Scrivener or any of the magical. I use Word. I don't use any of the magical writing software. I don't use OneNote. I don't use Story something or other where you put stuff in. I tried it and that shit doesn't work for me.
Yeah, it doesn't work. Yeah. I'm one of those people, like, I'm not too much of a perfectionist with that, and I'll spend more time futzing with making all of that information good than writing the books. And I know that about myself already because I've done a lot of project management. So I do recommend, like, if you think you need that sort of thing, start right away. Do it right away.
Yes. Key.
Because that's one of the things stopping me from doing it right now. Like, I've tried twice to pay people to build me a database. I think I've dropped like $6,000 into it at this point, and they've all failed.
Yeah.
So I'm too far in.
I've tried that as well, and it's a significant challenge, and you can't get there from here. No. The only way to do it is when you bring up a place name, you bring up a person's name, you've got to dive over, take yourself out of the scene to go document it, and then get back into the scene. It's a bad way to do it. So one thing I've started doing is at the end. Okay, I write in Word. I have the end as soon as I start, and I just keep that keeps moving down.
Same thing, yeah.
And right beyond the end, I've started adding in a list of, these are names for this race of creatures. These are names you can use, and I'll just take them and slide them in. I'll copy paste. So now I've got all the names. So I can do a much better search. So if I'm looking for somebody from Belzimus, I can do a search. There's the name. Have a nice day, and I've got it all. So that's one thing, and that was Tommy Dombovon taught me that one.
Oh, cool.
Tommy D resurrected to help us
I love it.
with our stuff, because he gave me his whole methodology of how he named characters, because he always had like the perfect name for a character that went with their character traits, and he gave me his whole methodology. And like a plant that's a jungle planet, he's like, okay, I would search flora in a jungle, and then I would look up some Latin names. I would twist it and see some sexy names. I would twist them around, and then he would add those up. It's like, okay, that gives the arbor kind of approach to this type of person, and his names. It's one of those. It's the little things that can make a difference in a book. So thanks to Tommy D for doing those things, but having your names ahead of time so you just copy paste and keep rolling, because you don't want to break a scene when you're writing. That impacts way too many people. Hang on just a second. We've got too mesmerizing.
I don't know quite what that means, but okay. How much of you do you build your world around? I don't know if I build my world around any of me, to be honest.
There's no math or science?
Well, I mean, there's all. I'm creating a setting that I think is I'm basically making what I consider to be a future history, and so that has to encompass a lot more than me. I mean, I guess I should make a point. There are two characters I think that embody me a lot, but that's not my world building. That's more my characters. One of them is very much my mind, and the other one's more my heart. How I feel about things, and those two characters do embody a lot. But the world building itself is really like, I just think about things. I quite literally, like, I get down to like, what are trade routes going to be like? What are the resources of this star system? Who are they going to trade with? Where's manufacturing going to be? I think about all of those logistics. Just like the same way if you're making a fantasy world, you've got a river and you've got a forest, and there's a junction in the river. Well, that's probably going to be where a town's going to be, and that's where the ships are going to go down to the ocean and whatnot. You just think about where those things are going to be, and that town. If they have to haul things by horse from the forest, they're going to have a lot of stables there. They're going to have a lot of people ready to shoe horses when they come in, and that creates your setting, that creates your industry, that creates the services that are going to go around it. And you just dump your characters in there, and you say, "What are you going to do?" And that's kind of how I do my world building is almost entirely separate from the plot and the characters. I just create this massive setting, and I just dump these characters into it and say, "What now?" So I don't know that I don't think a lot of me goes in the setting. That all goes in the characters and how they interact with the setting.
I would, after I wrote my first, I don't know, just a couple books, 30 or so, and I looked, and every single one of my main characters was a Marine or a former Marine. And I'm like, I see a trend. And Justice, I've written some 102 books, and every single one hates bureaucrats. We lament, we lambaste them, we make them the biggest dickweeds in every single book, and so my abject hatred and loathing of fucking bureaucrats carries through in my work. So you might see that. It would. I mean, it's not even subtle. So we hate bureaucrats, and everybody should join me in that and limit their influence. It starts with homeowners associations. Those ass wipes are the biggest, freaking bureaucrats of them all.
I like to make main characters actually that embrace things that I don't like. Like I've actually got this one main character that actually it's actually a romance between two female characters. One of them is an empress, and their National Congress building is actually built out of the bones of their enemies. Yeah, so they actually ground them up into concrete and stuff like that. I think that's nice. It's terrible, but it's like they're different people. So I don't think I have anyone who actually likes bureaucrats though. That would be subverting expectations quite a bit. So.
it's a low bar, but we can all get over that one together.
Exactly. Even bureaucrats.
But that went to my original first book, Write What You Know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, I know this. I know the feelings. I know the feelings when you're under high stress situations. I know the feelings when you're under fire. I know the feeling when you've had no sleep. So they work in. Later, I've had non-marine characters, but still we have that sense of justice. We have that challenge of, I know this is right, but does the end justify the means? Some of those themes. And that was my earlier books. It was, hey, end justifies the means. And as I grew up, it's grew in my writing. And so yes, and you've got to write those characters, and they have to relate to people. And when the people can get into them and see themselves in the characters, then you've got the story that people are going to buy, which means you can sell it. If you don't have characters that people can relate to, you might sell it one time, but you're not going to sell any of the follow-ups. And if you're building a universe, that's self-destruction there. You're writing a lot of books that nobody is going to read because they just couldn't relate to the characters.
Yeah.
So does that mean, do you ever stop yourself from getting carried away?
That's actually one of the reasons why I don't have a Bible and why I don't make a lot of really detailed stuff, because I would spend forever just doing that and not writing books. And luckily, Amazon's pre-order system, being 90 days, really trained me to do the bare minimum necessary as far as this extra work to get the book out. Like I do my character list, I'll do a quick map if I need to, and that's it. I just keep going. Because I could spend forever making encyclopedias and all sorts of things, but I need to write books to make money. So
that's right. Encyclopedias are neat because D&D, you build your character, you build your backstory, and then the dumbass dies in the first. In the first combat sequence, and you're like, holy shit, I spent 2 weeks building this guy. He's dead. You make another one.
That's so true.
What are things you should, at a minimum, include in your series Bible, and what are things you added to yours and never used?
Then you're asking, well, so I should take a step back and say that even though I don't have like a detailed Bible, I do have a lot of my setting information based set out. To the point, like, here's how long it takes to travel between star systems. Here's the weapons types we have available. Here's the engine types we have available. And it's all based on science, and even down to the point where, like, how does a photon beam release its energy at the right point to damage the target versus actually just firing photons right through someone? Because you make a photon cannon, and I've seen protons, not photons. You make a proton cannon, you fire protons at people, they'll just go right through them. They won't even make a hole. So you have to, think about all this. We actually worked out how all these weapons work, the energy consumption, the batteries that they're going to use, the magazines, how often you have to reload, all that stuff. That stuff is all documented. So when you drop characters into a scene, you just know what they're going to do. Or here's the types of star systems we have. Here's the type of space stations we have. Here's how they behave. Here's how docking with them works and stuff like that. So when you want to when you want to make a new star system, you just have all these components like Lego. You just plug in and you build a star system. So we do have all of that stuff documented because that's really crucial for the co-authors to know that. Like my wife, Jill loves writing the stories, but she hates having to figure out how long it takes for people to travel. I'm like, okay, here's your map. Here's all the distances. Here's how long everything takes. Now build your story around that. So it's very easy to do that sort of thing. But I don't get super detailed about like, oh, this planet they prefer this type of drink or something like that. And also, I think that's also kind of wrong because on Earth, is there a type of drink that's preferred on Earth? No.
Coke.
So you can't. I find sometimes when people try and make these archetype characteristics, they've gone too far. That might be a good way to think about it. If you start creating archetype characteristics for everything, you've probably gone way too far.
And for the record, Mal just described doing the math on how the energy would work in a frickin' weapon that you say, fire the mains, they fire, it blows up the other ship. But saying people like Coke is going too far. So let's just say, I think Mal is a pineapple on pizza kind of person. So anyway, we're gonna
on pizza kind of person.
We are not going there. But where we can go is the Writing Wives. This is something that Mal does with Jill. What can somebody copy in the link to the comments? Is that a Facebook group that you're running?
Facebook group, and we have a website as well. It's where we list our books and stuff like that.
Okay. The Writing Wives. And also, I know we get a lot of questions about your makeup and your routine now. Do you have some place to help folks who are looking for gaining the same look?
I have a Facebook group called the Malonie's. It's called Doomsday Doll now. It was called the Malonistas, but now it's called Doomsday Doll. So, because I got fun with it. Well, I'm a cover model now. I'm actually on book covers this year. So I've got to embrace that brand.
That's right. And I would recommend a tan, but that's just me.
This is partially the lighting. I have good lighting. It's all lighting.
You look like Morticia, man.
I'm going goth today on purpose. I was gonna go I was gonna do something pink and whatnot, but I grabbed my basic bitch palette. That's actually what it's called. It's called Basic Bitch. I just kind of went all out.
But it's just with the light. Yeah, you do have washout. Let me see if mine. I've got a light that shines in my face.
You're very incandescent, though. You get the nice warm glow.
Yeah. So yeah. Michael asked me for that. He said, "Put that on, otherwise you look like you're in the
By
dark."
Way, every time I come on this show with you, there's no Michael Anderle. Are you looking for another M?
Always happy. I think you would be an awesome co-host.
I would.
I just don't want to inconvenience people. And Michael actually volunteered. He said, "I'll run the show if you need a break." So we'll find some days, and Michael can bring in his guests, and the CNM show can be then Michael and whoever he brings in, as well as Mal. I should look at that and say a co-host. We're going to tag team, and we'll put them right in the middle so we can look at them both. Both look at them and make them feel welcome. How far would you go into a series before giving up on it because it's not selling? What if you really love the characters? Well, if you really love the characters, my answer to this would be then you're writing for the love of it and no longer for the business. If you're full time, you can afford to do that if you have every other book is a winner.
Yeah.
So because yes, I don't want to take the art away. I have a couple books that I'm writing that I don't expect will sell, but they're passion projects, nonfiction. One is called I Can See the Night. It's about my life here in Alaska and living where it's dark all the time or it's light all the time and where winter lasts 6 months. And how do these impact? How do you feel? What things do you run across? How do people approach life and stuff like that? So I've got that's pinned, but that's a passion project. I'll think of something, I'll add a paragraph and move on. I mean, might take me my entire life to write this, but I've still got it.
Yeah,
that's separate. Right now, Bad Company 7, because that's going to be wrap up the series. We're going to energize the whole series. We're going to make some good money, and I enjoy telling that story.
I think something I'm pretty sure you guys do this in LMBPN too, but you actually plan all series to be 3 or 4 books.
Yeah.
And then as the series progresses, if it's doing well, you introduce new threads that can make it longer. But if not, then you wrap it up. Yeah. I think you've got to think about that. Don't start a brand new series and think this is going to be a 12-book series. Start about what kind of 3-book arc can I write? Well, hinting at a possible longer arc. But if it doesn't go, I can wrap it up in those 3 books and move on. And could I move these characters into another series that I have or something which works when you're building a universe. I can take characters out of any series and just shove them into another one if I need to.
Yep. Perfect. And that is a good example. We plan right now. I've got a series with Julia Hooney, and that is 3 books. It's doing well. I think we're going to continue to the 4th book, but that was it. We wanted to wrap that first story arc in 3 books and then decide, do we want to move on? And then what would that second arc of 3 books look like?
Yep.
Like the one I'm working on now. It was supposed to be 8 books. It's going to be 7. Here's how I'm going to wrap everything up just because finances say see, do we want to answer this one? Do you build your universe trope before or during your writing?
To be honest, I always like think that I want to write about a lot of politics, and I can't bear it. Once I start writing about like governmental systems and politics, I get so bored. And my rule of thumb is if I'm bored writing about this, the reader's gonna be bored reading about it. So I actually don't really set up a lot of that stuff in detail. I might mention if a system's a democratic system, or if it's they have a monarchy, or they use what's called a demarchy or something like that. There's a lot of different scenarios. But I don't spend a lot of time on that, really. That's stuff that I feel like it doesn't really add to the story. I want to try and tell, especially when people have now read like 90 of my books in this universe, they don't want to learn about the politics of yet another star system. But also, it does depend on the scope. Like if it's a really close in, like I'm following like a beat cop, then yeah, I might need to tell a lot of the politics that are around him, because that tells, like, that's his setting. That's how he moves through the universe. But if I've got my starship captains flying into a new star system, to kick some ass and take some names, or something like that, the details of their political system doesn't matter. And it'll just bog the story down if I put it in there.
Okay. Put a new question up on the screen, because one thing we need to note, Mal writes generally hard science fiction. So hard where the math and science are correct, or at least traceable to something that's ongoing right now and can be somewhat proven, as opposed to photon torpedoes that are used at twice the speed of light.
No, don't say terrible things like that, Craig. Stop hurting my ears.
Heretical.
So, Steve, I write hard science fiction, but I believe that hard science fiction can encompass any genre. For example, any story told in modern day Earth is hard science, because it's all real science and real math. Like if I fly a plane from DC to Moscow, it's going to take a certain amount of time based on that plane. So every story that you would currently read, every movie you watch takes place historically or in our current time frame, is effectively that. You can write romance, you can write all sorts of things in there. I mean, I guess maybe if you start branching out into certain types of horror or stuff like that, it might not be stuff that you could fit in there, but you can tell so many stories. And so that's what I've done. And I thought, like, I also like to think, like, what are crazy things? Like in my universe, starships don't broadside each other because they're traveling too fast. They have engagements that last like 7 or 8 seconds. I'm like, but I really want to write a broadside. I'm like, okay, these guys are in a slow orbit, like being repaired or something like that. Like I set up a scenario where it will work. Another fleet like kind of like docks and is doing some things, and they start by like a close-in fight, because I want to have that kind of broadside starships just firing at each other point blank type of thing, because I thought that would be awesome. So I feel like if you understand your setting well enough, you can craft a story like that even inside your hard science fiction universe or something. And you could write a horror story. You just have to make it fit. Like, it's okay. It's not like some sort of creepy crawly thing from hell. It's a nanophage, and it's starting to rebuild people into plants because it's misprogrammed or something like that. And you can get a lot of those same sort of like visceral horror feelings and like terror and stuff like that, while still maintaining it inside your rule set for your universe.
The what I did with my universe is I took 10 books on planet Earth in a post-apocalyptic setting, but I wanted to write space opera. So we eventually got to a point where aliens had come and spaceships were available, and they were able to leave Earth. Cool. And then it became a space opera. We wrote one whole book that was that whole transition, just what it took to get from Earth to a faraway star system where a whole new universe was open. And that was Michael Anderle's Kurtherian Gambit universe. The other universe was always there, but my part was this post-apoc, but I wanted to write space opera. And cool. So, yes, the one thing you have to avoid when writing themes into any genre is appearing to preach. I like bureaucrats. They're just the bad guys. Everybody accepts that. I don't need to go on a pages-long diatribe about how much they suck. It's just I might have something like, oh, a fucking bureaucrat. Yeah, we should kill him. Oh, yeah, let's take care of that now. I mean, that would be the entirety of my loathing of bureaucrats.
The Marine solution again.
So I don't have to go on a page of, oh my God, look at all the stupid shit he made people do, and no, let's cut all that out. And that's the one thing. I include everything from the society of today, social issues. I get all that in there, but it's all subtle, it's all placed, and it's all Gene Roddenberry inspired. How he and DC Fontana were able to do that with the original Star Trek was inspirational. If you want to see how to include a social issue, Go watch an old Star Trek. Watch how they have a green chick, how a psychotic guy, and all this. And how did they come about? What are they doing about it? And it's like this guy's killing people, but they couldn't do him away because it was his mind. Something was messed up. This is the '60s. Go back. I'm a child of the '60s. Mal's a little bit younger. I'm a child of the '60s, so all of this stuff was real to me, even though I was younger. So if you look at it through that lens, like, oh my God, not only did Gene Roddenberry went so far beyond what was acceptable, and it made mainstream television, and it has been a timeless hit because of how he did it without preaching. Unlike some of the later Star Treks where they really preached on some issues, it's like subtle will win the day. And that is, and as an artist, that is your challenge, is how to make something so subtle that people have to look at it and really get into it to understand the points you're making. Yeah. So sometime, 100 years down the road, they're looking at Aeon 14 and they're saying, Mal says this curtain's blue. She never mentions any other curtain, so why is this curtain blue? And they can have those conversations, and you're like, oh fuck, I just forgot to give the other curtains color. So yeah, I mean, if you live that long, it was blue.
Yeah.
so those kinds of things, that subtle. That's how you, and then you can subtly move genres, because almost all my readers came over to my space opera from post-apoc.
Yeah, totally. And by the way, Steve, yes, I am a lot younger than Craig.
Bureaucrats. Sorry.
Craig's almost old enough to be my father.
I'm almost old enough to be everybody's father, and that's the.
I shouldn't push you under the bus there, Craig.
I'm old enough where I could be people's grandfathers who are writing and doing well.
That's crazy.
Oh my God! Hang on. Scrolling down for another question. Okay, hang on. Here's a good question too, because people are like, my first book didn't resonate. Is it worth revisiting?
If your other books and series get reviewed, but yeah, I think it totally could be. If you can figure out what you did wrong, which should be in your reviews probably, then yeah, I think you could revise your first book. Now, I guess you have to think like, okay, like say for example, my read through from a book 1 to book 2 is 40%, but book 2 on is 70% or something like that. And you have to think like, okay, if I get book 1 fixed and I improve my read through, say to 70% from book 1 to book 3, how much money will I make? Like you could do the math and figure it out. Or you could pay me to do the math. And I used to offer this for free, but I got inundated with it. So like
thewritingwives.com.
Yeah, I will do your math for you. But you might look and say, okay, you could increase your revenue by 20%, and that means like an extra $150 a month, let's say. You're like, okay, then in 12 months, it could actually pay for itself. But if you do all that math and you say like, I'm going to make like an extra $20 a month plus the editing, it's just not worth it. So it's a business thing. You have to do the numbers and figure out if it's viable or not. I'm generally of the opinion that you can't market that book to all the people that read it and didn't like it, but you could market a new book to them. So generally, I would say that the answer is usually no, unless it's like a really pivotal series that you need to be correct. Then you might want to do it.
Yeah, and I would say if you have readers who they like the follow-up books, well, they're the ones who liked your first book. So you have to wonder if unless you have everyone can stand alone, and I've seen a lot of those books where everyone can stand alone, yet it's a series, which is okay. That makes marketing really easy and multiple entry points where you have the same character. And unlike like Tom Clancy, you start reading those books, you can start anywhere, but you get confused and you're like, oh, well, let's go back to the Hunt for Red October and let's follow Jack Ryan through. And then you see, there is a progression. Because if you start the one where he's president, you're like, what the hell? He's just a knob, and you go back to the beginning. It makes it a challenge.
Yeah.
So just understanding that and the process, and also if you haven't found a lot of readers with that first book, and you don't get great read through, well, then all of the readers are still an option. But if you've marketed it, you've run some major promotions, and it's not selling with read through, then yes, you may have missed the mark on that. So that's the earlier you can decide, it's not resonating, and get good feedback from people in your genre who you trust that says, this is a turnoff. This is where I stopped reading. Then you can fix it before you go too far. But once you've started running major promotions, you've hit a free Booksy, you've hit Book Barbarian if you're in sci-fi, or I Love Vampires if you've got a vampire novel, then you might have to say punt, because you've already marketed to people. Go find a new first book, and that's easy to say. If you're taking 2 years to write a book, you might have to re-wicker. It's all, and you have to look, what's your time worth? What's the value of a rewrite worth if you remove this subset of everybody who looked at it first and turned it down?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, hang on just a second. Looking for another question.
The
analysis from PhD, because it's a sad curtain. So we have a scholarly analysis already, and we haven't even gone 100 years. We haven't even gone 100 seconds yet, let alone 100 years.
Probably not, but
so thanks. I love that you engage, Lawrence. I appreciate you coming on the show and listening to every show. Lawrence is a cancer survivor. Congratulations. Thank you for being with us and for keeping writing. He's helped a Marine friend and co-writing with Brian Thorne, and they're up to, I think, their third book is getting ready to publish. It's a good series. Anyway, give a shout out to Lawrence and for being stalwart, upright, and forthcoming. If you friend Lawrence and follow him on his page, he gives you updates. He's got his dog Gedge, and how can you miss? Oh, also, he speaks Klingon. So anybody who's not geeky enough, get your geek on.
No kidding, right?
Yeah. Oh, geez, we've been over an hour already.
We've been cruising.
It is always so enlightening and fun to talk with Mal Cooper, talk with you about everything. I mean, it's God, the universe, and the Earth. So there's so much going on, and besides our first little foray into advertising, we really didn't talk about ads.
No, we didn't. Hooray!
Hey, how about that?
How about that? I'm tired of talking about ads all the time.
Yeah, because there's so much going on. But one thing that I always like to caution people on, you wrote a lot of books, but quality books. Because we always say, write the absolute best book you can write as quickly as you can. Yeah. And this is an important. It has to be high quality. If people aren't reading through to your second book, like the question we brought up, it's about maybe there's something wrong with that first book. Maybe there's something wrong with the targeting. But if you've written other books and you've improved in certain areas, when you go back to that first book, you're gonna be like, oh shit, this is kind of crappy. Yeah. Or it's a good story, but man, I could have written this better. I could have written this better. So those kinds of things is so important. A quality book, and Alex Newton did the research on this. Written Word Media also did research, and they said the people who are making the money are writing good books, and a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And that's like when you went up to 25,000, it wasn't because your book was a bad book and you figured out marketing. It was a good book that you had not marketed properly before that. So this, and like you said, hey, I kept making, I think you were up to 40 grand after 3 or 4 months. Yeah. And that tapered off after it's like, okay, this one's dead. I need more books now. Yeah. It's a good book will sell. A good book will sell the second book. A good second book will sell the third book. And this is your key to long-term viability as an author. Yeah. If you write one book every 2 years and they're all standalones, perfectly fine. You just need to learn more about marketing and advertising than somebody who's writing a lot of books. Yeah. If you learn both, and if you embrace the business side of it, and this is what separates the 7-figure authors from everybody else. They truly embrace the business side of what's going on, and they write great books. So that's my final word. What do you have for us, Mal?
Oh, wow. I got like 3 seconds notice. I have to have a final word and sound all wise and everything. I guess the thing I want to tell people is that there's a lot of people that read books. There are probably, even if you have like a very small subgenre, you write like, I don't know, like Japanese or something weird like that. maybe it's even that weird. There's probably like 10 to 20,000 people who read that. And 10 to 20,000 people buying 2 or 3 books a year is a significant chunk of change. It's all just about finding those people. So if you can tell a good story, and your writing is good and whatnot, there's an audience out there for you. It's just a matter of finding that audience. Now, some audiences might be harder to find than others, but they're out there. So I feel like a lot of people, they're always trying to write something that's the most marketable, or they worry that they can't do this series because no one's buying it, but it's well written. You can find a market. You just have to spend a little more time doing it. But the readers are out there. There's a lot of them.
And as part of the investing in yourself as your own business concept, understand what it takes to find those readers, and then show them the book, and let them decide. And if you've got 3 books, I always say just you market the first one. Mm-hmm. You've got to and invest all of your time, as opposed to really spreading your marketing out. Especially if you've got a series. I only market the first books. I mean, I might throw some auto ads on later books in the series, but generally it's book 1, on book 1. And then if it's a good book, they'll keep reading. Some of mine have 80, 90% read through. Those are the series that I keep writing, because why not? Then book 2, book 3, that's all gravy. So yes, we could talk a lot more about world building. And one thing that Mal and I embrace is I think the logistics. And that was the first thing when Dungeons & Dragons first came out. So many dungeons were moronic. It's like, why would the big baddie be at the very end with no access? And you've got all these sub bosses that have nothing to do, because all you do is roll random encounters. Yeah. You've got all these orcs, and then you've got a dragon at the end. No, the dragon would have eaten the orcs already, and there's no way he could get out of this. So a lot of that, because people weren't taking the logistics of how does a dragon get into Sleepy Mountain, and then how does he support himself while there? Yeah, he could sleep for 5 years, no sweat. But then what does he do after that? And what would minions look like who were supporting and worshiping him, but still afraid? And so always the logistics, like, hey, here's a town that, so how do they get their supplies? How do they get their wood for the woodworkers to make their crafts? How do they get their wheat so they can grind flour? So all of this stuff. So when you build a world, think about the logistics, at least viable logistics. Yeah. And we all saw that. If you want to know about logistics, watch The Martian. First, you never want to go on a trip with Matt Damon, because you're going to get abandoned somewhere and it's going to suck. It's going to be bad. And then all of the universe has to spend billions of dollars to come get you. So don't go anywhere with Matt Damon, or actually Tom Hanks for that matter.
Yeah, Tom Hanks is bad news as well.
He doesn't have good luck if you go on a trip with him. You're going to be out there somewhere as well, and now you're going to be responsible for rescuing yourself. So, but understand, if you can understand the logistics that would support an environment, then you can sell that to your readers. Yeah. So world building starts with amateurs talk tactics, professionals talk logistics. Yeah, you don't need to explain the whole logistics. You just need to be able to understand it so it makes sense when a reader goes through it.
I think a great example too, even thinking about is what you said about the DC6s that you have up there. That creates like a separate environment. There's skill sets, there's trades, there's resources that go to where you live to manage these things that wouldn't exist somewhere else. And you might get like a lot of old mechanics who really know how to work on these things. And you've got to trying to run an apprenticeship program to get more younger mechanics. Once you understand that setting and the logistics that are going around it, the story just practically tells itself, because stories are just conflict. And the great thing about really good setting is it creates immovable conflict. If you don't have good setting, your characters are in easy mode. They can just do whatever they want. But if your setting is really strong, your characters have to work in this setting, and they're going to run into immovable objects. Like they're not landing 747s at these remote places in Alaska. It's just simply not going to happen. You have to get a smaller aircraft in there. And so the characters can't just send one 747 in with everything they need. They've got to send in a fleet of smaller planes or something like that. And it's an immovable object that the characters have to work around. And that creates that conflict that just makes for a better story.
Every good story has conflict. Look at Harry Potter. Look at any good, even romances. There's still a conflict. Oh, will the cowboy notice me? I mean, whatever it might be, if there's a conflict, even whether it's internal, external, and that is, you set it up, you have the inciting event, you have the conflict, you resolve that in a variety of ways. And then at the end of the book, you resolve that one conflict completely, even if it's within a larger story arc. So these are keys to to long-term viability and quality stories. And DC, a couple of the villages, the village themselves is around the runway, so they clear they clear the main street. There's no cars. Why? Why would you have one? Because there's no roads that go to some of these places. And the plane, like with the mail, the plane will land, drive up, park in front of the post office. They'll come out and get the mail, and then the plane will take off.
That's amazing. I love that.
So you have a plane arrive once a week. It's okay to be along the runway. It's not going to upset your sleep because they only can land in clear weather during the daytime.
Right.
So anyway, with that, thank you very much for being on the show. 70 minutes of Mal Cooper and probably an hour and a half worth of material. So please, thank you for watching. Tomorrow, I've been trying to get Hank Garner. He interviews almost all of the authors. He goes to shows. I think he had Dean Koontz on last week, maybe the week before. So talking to an interviewer about interviewing. So hopefully we can have Hank on tomorrow, and if not, we'll find somebody else. And then C&M show will return on Saturday with Craig and Michael talking about not talking about hairy monkey balls or our butts. You guys have a good one. We will peace, fellow humans.
Bye.